everybody to understand that life of an activist, it's not a joke, right? Everybody to understand that life of an activist, it's not a joke. That's it. We're live. I can hear myself, so perfect. And think I can see myself in a second. Sorry, everybody. It's just a bit to set up. A bit to set up.
Yeah. Okay.
In a second. Right. There we go. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome to BelDiasporaTV. Vera Horton is with you. And today we are going to talk to activists from Hong Kong. I'd like you to, so it's Kit Cheng, right? Is your name?
Yes,
we're calling you Sam.
Yeah, I'm also can big name Simon. So it's much more people they know about this name.
Thank you. So Simon is man's main name in England. Sam, I will call you Sam because I can't pronounce your full name. Unfortunately, it will take a couple of attempts. I guess those Belarusian names are quite difficult for not native speakers as well. Sam, I know that you've been quite active in Hong Kong, and I met you when you were already in England, and I'm already out of Belarus, and we are activists from very different parts of the world. But what have emerged during our conversation was that the methods of oppression that applied to activists in Belarus and in Russia as well are very similar to the methods of oppression that apply to activists in Hong Kong. And when we talked about Roman Protasevich, you said that something quite similar happened to you. And I would like you to share your story with us, if you can.
Yes.
So,
when I watched the news about what happened to Romans, I felt very shocked. Because I think it is also really exceptional and rare when we see that he take a flight from one EU country to another EU country and could be diverted. And I understand it's quite shocking to many activists like me, and it just come across what my memory when I was detained, and when I back to Hong Kong. I also, I was not taking flight, but taking the high-speed train, and actually is crossing the border. And that physically back in Hong Kong, because that is a high-speed train between mainland China and Hong Kong. So I have been stopped when I was trying to get out of the border. Although physically I was in the central Hong Kong, but they also set they carve out the border to mainland China. So I've been stopped, and they gave me no reasons. I felt, definitely it's because of the politics. At that time I was on business trip when I was working for the British consulate in Hong Kong. So that's why I understand that might be because my activities in concert and my activities for the protest as well. And I already heard about the rumors that the National Security Police, they would, they would stop anyone at the border and to check their messages from the phone or something. So my first response would be like to delete all the messages on the phone. It's not because I feel I did something wrong. It's because that the chilling effect would be so massive that to most of the people, they will be afraid of even one or two sentences, which is deemed to be criticizing the government, could be in deep trouble. So that's why I want to protect myself and wanted to protect all the people that have connections or conversations with me. So I delete all the messages. And I've been put into the police station nearby the high-speed train, the terminal. But that is physically in Hong Kong, but that is just very small police station from mainland China. I've been detained here for several hours, and they understand they need to deliver me back to mainland China. So that's why the escort not escort, but they just drive me onto the train and took me back to Shenzhen, to the mainland China. So yeah, and afterwards, I understand I've been detained for interrogation. The first time I've been put into the police station back in Shenzhen, I put into the cell, and one or two police officers, they wear no uniform, and even they haven't shown me any badges. It seems absolutely informal and secret. So that's why I felt, that they're working for secret department, that is national security. It's a politically sensitive case. And they asked me about what do I feel to Hong Kong. They asked me a really abstract question. They said, what do you feel about the protests in Hong Kong? And how's your work in the British consulate? And they said, who and who that and it shows up in the protest, something. I feel, from the nature of the whole matter is really politics. And I felt very shocked because what I said is absolutely legal. Back in Hong Kong, I never ever could imagine I could be detained for interrogation by mainland Chinese police. So that's I try best to explain. And the answer I felt very shocked is that they said what I did, what I said back in Hong Kong might be legal, but where am I now? I said, I'm in mainland China. And they said, that's because you're in mainland China. So we can judge your behavior back in Hong Kong based on mainland Chinese law, because now you're in mainland China. But I feel really shocked, and it's blatantly breach the two system between Hong Kong and mainland China. And if we can look back today, it's absolutely non-exist of two systems already. But that time, still, before the national security law had been imposed in Hong Kong. So I feel still very shocked, and I witnessed the really quick collapse of the two systems and the limited autonomy and freedom back in Hong Kong. So yeah, so that's why I felt shocked when I heard about what happens to Roman. And I'm not sure, because I'm not familiar with Belarus. I think to many Hong Kongers as well. But when we see about these similar cases, and we would expect, like Romans might also be treated in that way, or quite even badly. We're not sure, because we only see that the confession videotapes have been broadcast. But of course, that's I feel equally with him, because I also have been enforced to confess. And I understand that's the feeling of his family members. So that's why I also feeling, like now I have no choice but need to cut ties with my family members, because a bit different. The boy has been detained in Belarus, but their family members already have been outside. So the family members speak for him. And I think that is quite important. Is really care about at least the personal safety of the people, because I think no matter what, the people that has their own rights to speak freely, right? So even what we heard is because Romans organize groups online using Telegram channels, just because they're vocal to be critics. I think, based on the universal human rights standard, it doesn't mean that is any criminal act, because that's the people that have their thoughts. That's the thoughts might be different, right, from the government.
Absolutely. Sam, I would like to go a little bit into details about what happened to you in terms of, we already established that we have a similarity of oppression. And yes, China is kind of, we call it hybrid annexation, but in a hybrid way is annexing Hong Kong and take it under its law, regulations, and oppressive system of China is already moving into Hong Kong. Similar way we've got, for instance, Russia is moving into Belarus and also kind of taking Belarus away, trying to do it. But equally, Belarusian police inside Belarus ever so helpful in that, and ever so helpful to oppress their own people. And you mentioned that you were also made to confess. Could you please tell us a little bit more? Because it is a very popular form of oppression in Russia, in Chechnya, in Belarus, and we see it in Hong Kong. What are they doing?
Well, they've been quite rare to do the things toward Hong Kong people, but we could expect more and more in the future. But it's not surprise to many Chinese dissidents back in mainland China, because they're so opaque, the judicial process so opaque. When I've been in the detention, I have been forced to confess that I solicit prostitution. And that is quite rare, because if they usually would deal with the Chinese dissidents, they would directly charge political reasons, such as rioting or subversions or even making troubles or etc. etc. But I think that at that time, because they would also need to have more time to, to see the feedback or response from the Hong Kong society, international society, but of course my employer, the British government.
So they want you to confess into something that will definitely harm you, either with your family or with your employer. Confess into something that is not appropriate.
Yeah, I think that is the aims would be stigmatizing the reputation, humiliate not only me, but also my family and also my employer. And that, of course, I did nothing wrong about it, but I had no choice, because what the choice for me I had at that time is that either I confess this, or either I could be criminally detained and face a harder charge, such as the political charge, rioting or something. So I think at that time still many people, they ask me what my feeling, and my feeling is at least that they haven't made up their mind to charge me politically. So I still have a chance to leave. So to me, I feel it's not a negative side, but a positive side for me at that time.
Oh, absolutely. Israel has a developed system, because their soldiers were very often kidnapped by sort of other side of the conflict, and the regulations or brochure of what to do tells soldier just stay alive, do whatever they want to do, just stay alive. So that's very important, and I believe that Roman Protasevich is now cooperating with the regime out of no choice whatsoever, and he's showed everywhere by the ruler Lukashenko, by the regime, as a sort of person who tells the truth. However, whatever Roman is saying is under big question, because it is obviously working for the regime. So what else have Chinese authority made you to say that would be for the regime?
Yes, and besides, because that I have been forced to confess and make the videotape, but actually also have other few videotapes haven't been broadcast. And one of those that I have been forced to say I haven't been tortured, but actually is a lie. I've been tortured, but because that they did something wrong, so they deliberately, asked me to say I haven't been tortured. Something. So
that's exactly what Roman Protasevich was saying. He was saying, nobody beat me, his nose is broken, I have no wounds, I have nothing, everything is fine, everything is great, they treat me very well. Did you have to say the same?
The same. Yeah, exactly the same. I think sometimes, at least what are my experience, I feel, is that they exactly did something. So they asked the people, they say the opposite. So it is something like that. And of course that they said I betray my motherland. Because what they feel angry is that, say, as a Chinese person, they think that's work for the British government. Then they think that is total betrayal. So that's why I've been confess and express the remorse and regret. And that's the third confession videotapes that haven't been broadcast yet. And also when I've been in the detention, they prepare dozens of the decision paper, the judicial paper. And I remember why they would enforce me to confess the prostitution I think is because this kind of so-called law-breaking or events is need not to go through any courts, so that they can absolutely control internally, because they think that is like minor events and need not to go through the courts, need not to leave it to the prosecutors, then the secret police that they can totally control it. And based on that, they need not to go through the lawyers, ask other people, because they absolutely could put it in secret. And of course, that is because that, that is confessed when I've been detained. Then they prepare lots of decision paper. This kind of decision paper, they leave all blanks and ask me to give a fingerprint so that they can write whatever they want on it. And I still remember they prepared two different types of decision paper. The first one would be 15 days first, and afterwards they might add on more crimes.
This is very interesting, Sam, because that's exactly what happens in Belarus. They've got a template, and on that template, yes, it's very different. I know it's very different in terms of culture and language, but the methods they use is absolutely similar, as if they were reading the same books on how to do it. So what happens, they do prepare documents, templates, and then they just put the name of the offender, who is a demonstrator, peaceful protester. So they just put names of peaceful protesters, and the crime will be atrocious. It will be the breaking of the law of all kind. It will be criminal offense. And they fabricating it already in thousands, no problem. So you had to prepare, they prepare already two different sentences as well, right?
Yeah.
Preparing different documents with your fingerprint, so they can fill in whatever they want later, because you have already signed the document.
Exactly.
Right.
So they like they do not even one day, but several days. They prepare piles after piles of decision paper, and I'm not sure why it's so dodgy. I mean that's I gave fingerprints, and then they write whatever the sentence they want. I still remember even 15 days. It's at 15 days, but from when to when they leave it blank. It would be at the very last minute that they submitted, I'm not sure to who, then they would say, oh, we can see very arbitrary. So I understand that my future is not being guaranteed for 15 days. I understand that at least, but the 15 days to me is my last hope. If I can be let out after 15 days, that is my last hope. That is the really decisive factor for me to keep, determination to keep alive, to keep survive. Otherwise, that my mentality could be broken down. And of course, that they prepare this, and sometimes almost every day, when I've been in the prison cell, then they taught me out. They taught me out, because those people, they how could I say, when I've been put in the detention center, that is from another department, but the secret police, they haven't, control me yet. Then they need to take me out of detention center for interrogation, because what they claim that for me is solicited prostitution. So I've been kept under by another department. Then they took me out for the interrogation. I've been hooded, I've been blindfolded, I've been handcuffed and shackled. Totally, I can't move. And they drive me onto the private van, and it's even not a police car. Then they drove me to an unknown place. And I understand that kind of the facilities would be quite, like a black jail or secret detention center for specifically the secret police, the national security police. Then I've been dragged into one very quiet interrogation room. I can't see anything, so I don't know what it looked like. And they start the interrogation. I suddenly heard a male voice, really could be a native Cantonese speaker, what I thought he might be even a Hong Kong police officer, and said, "How dare you? You as a Chinese but work for the British government, but work for the British. You are a traitor." And I also heard about Malfoys and who speak in, Northern Mandarin, like such as from Beijing or Shandong, I'm not sure. And he said, we understand that you work for the public spy agency because it's the consulate, so they think that it's a spying agency. And we are also working for that. So, here in this location, there has no human rights. That's what he said. And that's why I've been hung up for countless hours. I don't know for how long. And I've been, I feel really painful because that's been hung up. And even that sometimes they put me down, but they request me to raise my hands up continuously. So, and I feel that's really clever because they deliberately not to leave any wounds or like any sides I've been hurt or something. But you will feel very uncomfortable. They put me into this very stressful position for a countless hour, and if I cannot, my muscle or my arms or something would feel painful and sore, and sometimes it would be shrivel. Then they would bite me and would bite at the most vulnerable joints and points, such as ember or something, and sometimes that they would ask me to stand still, cannot move a bit for also countless hours. And meanwhile, I still need to raise my hands up as well. And I've been hooted, really hard to breathe. So I just heard something like they playing some, mobile phone or something, because a lot of sounds about mobile. It seems that they have not only one, but several people to continuously to monitor.
They have torture on the factory base. So it's like 10 people and they just torture one second while simultaneously, right?
Yeah. But I've been put alone, of course, that is really quiet. But I believe that it's not an exceptional treatment. I think that is quite usual. It's
a torture, and it's a psychological torture. It's the all human rights violation that's happening now I can see on a world scale basis everywhere in the world, which is really dangerous for us all. Yeah. So, Sam, you've mentioned something about. First of all, I'm very glad you have made it out, because I can see you're now safe, which is really great. Mm-hmm. And I'm really sorry you suffered, and I can only cry for those people who are in Belarus and suffering that much. And I think if we will look at the torture and methods that used in Belarus, they are probably similar to torture methods that used in Hong Kong and in China by your police departments, which is breakage of all laws, and they're basically all absolute criminal. So you mentioned something about a family. How did your family react to your confessions, and what happened to you, and why you said that you had to break the ties with your family?
Well, of course, because, when I think that when the things happened, and of course that my family members will be really skeptical for that. But, like when I've been back to Hong Kong, and really lucky that I've been let out, because I think 99.9% cases on the hands of the Chinese National Security Police, that is ever no chance to be let out for just 15 days. Usually the case with them will be over decades. But I'm lucky enough when I'm back here, and I'm not sure whether that's my family members don't really want to trigger my really bad memory, so they just pretend nothing happened, Then when I went home, and seems like everything's like normal, just like before. But what I heard from my friends, from my girlfriend, that's my family members, they feel really hurtful. And when the time when I gone missing, and even they realized that I've been detained, and they cry almost every day. What the things that they feel a little bit lighter or have a little bit, comfort is that they heard is just administrative detention. That is what the matter they think is less worse than they imagined. The thing that really wants to see the case wants to be going into absolutely political. So that is a chance that I've been let out. But when I've been back to Hong Kong, they pretend just the same. And I haven't mentioned all the details about the case because they're pretty old enough. Then I don't feel they're being really mentally prepared to take that. And even honestly, I don't think, and they also feel there's nothing they can control, that they can't even manage. So that's it. And when I understand, even when I'm back home, that it will be just for short period of time, because I already been stigmatized using a lot of state media, official propaganda to stigmatize me, to say I'm, so-called sex criminals or something. I have no
they made you not a political criminal, but they made you a sex worker criminal.
Yes, something like that. And I think that it's like a joke. Many friends know me. I'm not that type of person. But of course, to me, I even don't think, this kind of the so-called crimes could stigmatize the whole bunch of people in Korea. So I feel, at that time, and, it's really a huge psychological pressure. And so that's why I feel that it's the only one way for me is to speak out the truth, because it's not just for me, myself, it's about to let the people to know about the whole judicial flaw that's in the whole CCP regime. So I cannot stay in Hong Kong because I've been warned already. The one prerequisite for me to be let out is that I need to keep quiet. I can't do any media interview for that. So if so, they said they have lots of the Chinese agent working in Hong Kong, and they could take me back to mainland China if I broke the promise. That's why I say nothing to my family, and then I took the flight to Taiwan.
Thank you. Well, that's smart. Was smart idea. So I want to understand. Thank you very much for sharing this experience, Sam, because that's very painful, but it's important for us to know as well. And what they are doing, they capture a person. I'm just trying to understand the method and scenario there. So they capture a person, they give him choice of 10 years in prison, or you work for us or cooperate, and say on camera what we want you to say, give us all these compromising videos that we will blackmail you just in case. And we will release them slowly over a period of time, and you are not in control of it. We will do what we want to do according to what we think is right.
Exactly.
And then they put you through some strenuous regime of torture, beating, psychological abuse of all sorts. And then they give you a condition. You will keep quiet about it. You will stop your political activity. We will let you go for now. But we can kill you and your family at any time we want because we have plenty of agents.
Yeah. Exactly. You really rightly mentioned about the tactics of threatening.
The reason why I'm knowledgeable, because the same tactic applies to Belarus. So I'm just translating similar tactics. And I just want you to know that across the world, people are suffering, not only Chinese people suffering, Belarusian, Russians, I'm sure Chechens people are suffering. And I'm sure much more activists will come forward and talk about their experience, because we have similar oppressive strategy used against us across the planet.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I think that's why they said, they let me out, but they gave me the phone numbers. And I understand that I might be handpicked to, to be an informant for them. If I not cooperate, then they would broadcast so-called compromising materials. And I haven't given. That's why I speak out. And when I speak out, and you can see my enforced confession videotapes and other so-called compromising materials have been broadcast by CGTN, the state media overseas. So I even understand that their media, that's previously they have European quarters in London. It could be a tool, for keep persecuting the people, keep threatening the people. So that's why I've been in the UK. I filed a complaint to Ofcom, and that's I've been, they uphold my complaint. Really grateful because I showed the evidence to them, and the CGTN cannot get a proper license in the UK to run the business anymore. And I understand that it's not just about business; it's about the propaganda from the CCP regime. And what kind of things like, to me, a whistleblower, I've been out of their jurisdiction. I've been now on the warrant list. I've been hunted down by the police, but also every day I've been also stigmatized and targeted by their state media. And it would be the nightmare haunting me in the rest of my life.
Yeah. You may be pleased to know that I'm also on a state media in Belarus as the extremist, as the proactive person who is telling lies about the regime. And they already tried to write articles about me, disclosing my personal details, talking about all sorts they can find. So I've been under the same treatment in Belarus, and most likely I will not go to Belarus because it's not going to be a good idea for me. So as thousands of activists around the world who have to flee their own countries and they cannot come back. And I wasn't an activist when I went out of Belarus, but becoming activist, even when you are abroad, means that at home you can start be prosecuted. Because Putin, for instance, kills his opponents abroad. Lukashenko is now together with Putin on this scheme, killing activists abroad. And one activist was killed not long time ago in Ukraine. And it's kind of starting, and it may like a suicide. It may look like somebody suddenly died, and it's all very strange. And there is a book written about it called How Putin Kills Abroad by Yuri Shilipa. And I think I will be translating this book soon because it's very, very interesting. Do they have similar agents in London who are trying to hunt down on the activists?
I think that in China now, so far, it hasn't been go that far yet, but we're not sure in the future. It's quite well known. I mean, to Russia, to North Korea, that's still been really, really harsh and cruel. I mean, what it hurt is not only one case, but regularly we heard some about assassination case happens to activist or opposition figure. And it's really, really threatening and scaring to most of the people. And China, so what we heard about the track record cases, most of the cases will be kidnapping. They try not to assassinate, but they tried, if you travel, if you're going to transit, just at what we heard in Dubai.
Right.
And that they would even have a power to persuade the local police there to detain you. And even the Chinese embassy or the ambassador have a power to take those detainees out of the control of the local police, but they have a secret detention center of China in Dubai.
In Dubai, right.
Yeah.
I wonder if they have Belarusian secret detention center in Dubai, but so far they didn't. However, I don't know. It may build up soon. So we better be careful where we go in the world.
I think, like why I would feel really shocked, because of course the Belarus, what we heard is the last dictators of the Europe, right? So the president there. And like, because that is like not really powerful country that, but they've been encouraged to do that, or they dare to do that. They even can stand against the sanction from the EU, but they've been surrounded by the EU countries. So I feel, let alone like CCP regime or China. And so that's why I feel it's a chilling effect. And to me, I need to think twice if any chance I need to fly to East.
Right, right. So you feel that Eastern Bloc, as we can call it now, will subject to Chinese rules and laws and secret services much more likely than the Western Bloc.
Such as like Switzerland already have a public treaty with the Chinese agents. That's the Chinese agent can come to decide who they prefer to extradite back to China. So
which country, say it again, please?
Switzerland.
Switzerland.
Yeah.
So Switzerland is already together with China on that.
Yeah. And that has happened, they signed a treaty with Chinese agent, and the Chinese agent could come here to, once that they feel any, so-called criminal suspects have been waiting for extradition, then the Chinese agent to come here to recognize the face of those and to decide whether that they have been extradited. EU will be slightly better, but we're not sure even about Hungary or any other countries that they've been stand quite friendly with China. We're not sure whether that they might give in the pressure influenced by the CCP. So yeah, I think it's not just about one country, but even when the authoritarian regime is going to be much more influential, and it will affect into the personal safety of the activists overseas as well. So yeah, so I also, understanding when, the case, what happened to Romans, what do you feel? I mean, would you feel also worry about it, and whether that you feel your safety while you take travel or something?
Well, I think we all now a little bit cautious about our safety when we travel. We're very hopeful that this is one-off case and the hijacking of the planes will not happen very often, because the response of the international community was good. They did they did start argument. I think they didn't want it. They wanted to show that it's not normal for,
So does it mean that Roman actually is like a high value target?
Yes, absolutely. Roman was very high value target, and he is now made to work for the regime, because regime is trying to show actually very similar narrative that's used in China. This Western agents working with Western agents, and the Roman was with the enemy, effectively, with some agents or puppeteers who rule the world, and Roman was with them. And now Roman comes back home confessing how bad those high executives were, and how great really his Belarusian regime country is, how great his homeland is. And it is also giving that narration of people were protesting not because of atrocities of the regime of Lukashenko, but because some other third force from somewhere abroad have made them to do so on some evil purpose. So it completely takes the idea of the protest of we are protesting against bad treatment, maltreatment, human rights abuse, wrong, securities and no securities, no social securities, and protesting about health not fulfilled and wrongly exercised health and safety on the factories. But those people were made to protest because there is nothing to protest about, but they were made by the West. And this is how it is.
It's really similar. Yeah, it is really similar. And one more question, because like, for example, here, sometimes I've been monitor and follow, and afterwards that some British media expose it, then it's going a bit better. And I understand, like Romans, when he took on the flights, he also felt a little bit weird because he felt some of the people that monitoring him when he
he was followed.
So I guess some agents already on board to take him down. And for example, in here might be sometimes not that obvious, like agents keep monitoring us, but also is about the diaspora community. What the diaspora community in here is quite different, because like the UK government is rarely to open the gate for over millions of the people from Hong Kong to come. And what we aim for is that not to let the CCP propaganda to dilute the nature of that, because of course they've been easier to single out one or two prominent activists and isolate them. But they're really, really hard if that's becoming a mass public to support.
Exactly. And this is what we're hoping for, that mass activity of people will suddenly become the sea, and you can't fish out the drop of water out of the sea. So that would be really difficult. Very interesting was also about the reaction of international community, because I think if we will get more support from international community, the more truth we say, the more support we will have, because people understand, they can understand right and wrong. What I wanted to warn kind of everybody is that it looks like economical ties with China and very good and economic sort of ways of development, unfortunately, also lead into that work together in a human rights violation when you start working with Chinese secret services. So it's almost like first you have a very good economic ties with China and you are great and happy about the business, and then you have to sign some strange contracts of extraditions to China of the activists, and also you have to extradite people who will be tortured and killed and abused in China, but you have to do it because there is such a good financial reward. I think it is really something humanity should think about nowadays.
I think, unfortunately, that is kind of like trade-off when we wanted to get economic benefit, but while we need to compromise the human rights standard. And might be some of those people, they think, oh, it's not for my business. It's about those Hong Kong activists, those Chinese citizens. But we already can see that national security law has been imposed. They said, regardless what nationality you are, then if you've been deemed so-called endangering national security, then we will hunt you down. So even British citizens, American citizens, lots of others, suppose you're a human being, then we also need to be self-censor for that. So gradually the people understand what happened to Hong Kong, what happened to Belarus is not just the places or the matters happens far away and none of my business. It's about the people that they need to stand together. The diaspora in here, I think that even the CCP already know what we are trying to do, because they are now harder and harder to single out me to attack, because we built the expats association, so they understand it might be much more people behind it or something,
So Sam, just to clarify, CCP is the main television broadcasting agent in Hong Kong?
No, CCP names Chinese Communist Party.
Oh, Chinese. So it's a main Chinese. I'm just not familiar with Chinese television, but I'm sure that some people who will listen to our talk later, I will do subtitles. I think they will be more familiar because they're from Russia, and Russia is closer to China, so they do know about that television.
Yeah, exactly. The CCP, of course, that I would say, is like a regime because they control all the powers about that. But for example, in here, what we are facing is lots of Chinese overseas community. We need to know how to get along with them. But usually those people, even they're not really Chinese, but they might Malaysians, Singaporeans, Indonesians, but that is Chinese in descent. Then they'll be really commonly subscribe the narrative of the Chinese Communist Party, CCP's propaganda. That they would feel, in here, they talked about hate crime. Then they would feel the hate crime, the racism against Chinese is because the so-called Western-centric view against or bias to China, to the CCP regime. So that's
Very
why.
interesting. Sorry, I'm interrupting you, Sam, because in Russia, there is a whole narrative about Western world Russophobia. So it's not that they talk about Russian politics and Russian violation of human rights, but it's just generally Russophobia. Do they say about Chinese as well, that it's a general hatred of Chinese people?
Yeah. I think that's they try to simplify the things because, we never ever attempt to stigmatize Chinese people. But what the good tactics they're having to do is like they do hijacking the Chinese people to be with the whole CCP regime together. So one of the people they criticize, some policy and even the system that's persecuting the people, suppressing the dissenting thoughts. And actually the people feel, oh, you're biased, you listen to the fake news of the West. And that's why even the Chinese overseas in the UK have been discriminated because, the media talk about Xinjiang, talk about COVID-19 and said that's why we suffer. And I feel sometimes it did it quite effectively and solidify some Chinese overseas community in here. But so that's why they've been.
One second, Sam, just very important, because we have the same situation with Russian community who listen to Russia Today, who listen to Putin's propaganda. We've got, I'm sure, a Belarusian community abroad who is also listening to Lukashenko's propaganda. And they have, even when they live abroad, they have that strange feeling that, oh, somebody's attacking Russia, West is attacking Russia, but they live in the West. They live in London. They don't live somewhere else. They are not in Antarctica. They are in London with English, with British people, with a British culture. Still, when they watch that propaganda, they start saying the same what propaganda says. And start saying it, and I'm trying to fight it on a Facebook, saying, guys, you are in London, you can't be pro dictatorship. You're in the wrong country.
They will be easily to go into the way that is either like pro China or pro UK or something. We say, look, it's not that matter. It's about whether that's you pro democracy or you pro dictatorship. It's just that simple. And I think, sometimes it's exactly what you're experiencing now in the UK. We're also experiencing because Hong Kong diaspora because of this, they're fleeing from persecution. They come here. It might be millions. And if we can successfully solidify those bunch of people, the Chinese Communist Party propaganda cannot work even in the UK anymore. Because we have a data based on data by the Chinese embassy. It's about 700,000 Chinese overseas in the UK, and 17%, 70, the majority of the people, they're actually from Hong Kong. And if this new wave of immigration happens to the UK, it would double the whole population. If we can successfully solidify them to memorize the protest happened back in Hong Kong, we paralyze the whole propaganda works in the UK from China anymore. So they've been very afraid of it. So that's why they mobilize some of those, pro-CCP figures as a community leaders in the UK to try to exert their influence. And for example, now the UK government aside some resources to help Hong Kongers to integrate. And we already understand some of the application for funding have a deep connection with the pro-CCP forces. And they've been very aimed for several specific areas, such as education, because the UK government wanted to have an NGO to educate the people about the historical linkage between the UK and Hong Kong. CCP really minded about it, really minded. And also it's about the hate crime issue, because the hate crime issue usually that has been really good narrative of the CCP to say, you need to have a stronger motherland so that we can let you have a pride.
That's very good, because we also said the strong leader required, the strong response, that dictatorship is almost necessary to control all that evil coming from the West, you know, that evil capitalism coming from the West. Yes.
Exactly. So they said, you know, if you have been stronger motherland and you have that pride as Chinese, you won't be racially abused in the West, in London, in the UK. So that's so many Chinese overseas subscribe that narrative. And also that's, they say, as I mentioned, the hate crime is that the hate crime is not just about the race, it's about the Western media stigmatizing the image of China. So that's why we've been racially abused. We need to stand against it. So that's why now they even wanted to brainwash the Hong Kong new arrivals in here. I'm not, so that's the thing. We're facing the challenges. So that's why I'm not sure, because I also see you're in, you know, this diaspora community. I guess that's you also, you know, experience some similar thing.
Yes, thank you very much, Sam. And to conclude, I would like to mention very interesting information coming now from Afghanistan, for instance. And Afghanistan is sort of losing to Taliban, and the world is losing to Taliban in a way. And it may be a smart move, because we can't, like England and America cannot sort of pour the forces into the project that will not be able to survive, or will not be able to go the way that we would like it to go. However, there is the other side, maybe Russian side, that already talked to Taliban. Taliban went to Moscow, so maybe they will negotiate better. I don't know what will happen to them, but Taliban definitely is the model that is in a scale of dictatorship from 1 to 10 is probably 10. So if China may be 7, Taliban is 10. So it's interesting what will happen. However, I can see similarity in what Taliban is saying to people and what Chinese policemen were saying to you, that you are working with the West, with British, and this is essentially a crime. So you are a traitor. And also the same narrative, Belarusian regime and the Russian regime starts bringing up, as you work with the West, you cooperate with the West, you talk with the West, you give an interview, you are talking to a journalist, and therefore this is a crime. So the truth of whatever kind becomes a crime.
Yeah, exactly. So Taliban as well, the situation, I think that's, you know, like China might be a little bit happy if Taliban's would be there, but not cause trouble at the border, you know, like in Xinjiang or something. That is something they at least would feel, oh, might be the West will focusing on the Middle East again, and I can buy more time to run the power. But in return, I also can see, you know, because Taliban's or Afghanistan, what happens in Afghanistan, lots of corruptions that happens, and then they spend lots of resources to help the new government there, but you can see it's still quite weak, and that is, you know that they would feel maybe is for long term and consuming lots of energy and resources. We're not sure which side that will be better. We will see in the future, because I worry about it. If the security promise of the US cannot be kept, then what happened to Taiwan? What happened to other places? But also I heard some feedback from other people that they said that's why, because they're wasting resources in Afghanistan, so they will put all other more resources in other fronts. I'm not sure, you know.
Well, let's see what happens, but I think it's great that we start talking and letting international community know what is happening around the world. And today it was talk about Hong Kong and Kit Cheng. Thank you very much for coming, and have a great day. And we continue our fight for the goodness, for the good things in the world. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Vera. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.